Greetings from down under. I'm Liz Hayward. I make zero waste sewing patterns and write and educate on sewing, fashion and zero waste. In this presentation I'll be showing you 5 different ways to make buttons from things you have at home or that are compostable. Hope you enjoy it. I'm outside here making buttons out of wood, and I was inspired by these that I already had at home. These and this one here. I worked for a fashion designer, and one year she did big wooden buttons on knitwear, and she found a man who made these. He made them especially for her. You can see they're cut from a tree, but they haven't got any bark around the edge. Unlike these, which I got from a wood turner at a market stall. These are white cedar apparently, and they've still got the bark on them, and he oiled them with tung oil. So I've gone and found a branch in the backyard. My buttons are going to be much tinier. I found a stick in the backyard from a gum tree, and I cut off some rounds like this. They're about 1/8 of an inch thick, using this saw, and I'm going to clean them up with sandpaper now, and then I'm going to drill some little holes in them. So I've just drilled the holes in. I marked them with a pencil where they were meant to go, and then I used this punch to just start it off so the drill bit didn't jump around, and I used a 2mm drill bit. I had a couple of casualties where they split, but that's alright, because I wondered if that might happen, so I did some spares. So now I'm just going to oil them. And here they are. I used linseed oil. This is a leather toggle that looks a bit like a croissant. That's known as a chap knot. And it doesn't need any sewing, it's just wound round and holds itself in. And you can make these if you've got leather scraps at home. It doesn't take very much leather. So this one here is made from a triangle, and this end here is 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres, and the length is 6 inches or 15 centimetres. And when you cut the triangle, cut the end into a really fine point, thinner than it would normally be if you put a ruler on it. And in the centre, if I fold that in half there, you can see in the centre make 2 holes with a leather punch. For punching the holes I use this. It's a 1/8 punch I just got from the hardware shop. And to make the toggle, start rolling at the wide end and keep it centered. Come around, and then when you get to the holes, bring this around, and this fine point is going to go down and then up like a running stitch through the holes. That's why it has to be fine. And then work that around in the center, and then pull tight, like really tight. And there you have it. If you want to make a bigger one like this one is 2 inches wide at the widest part and 8 inches long. You'll need to experiment with where the holes are going to be, but you still need to cut the end very fine like this. So this one is 2 inches here, that's 5 centimetres, 8 inches long, which is 20 centimetres, and the holes are 3 inches in, that's 7.5 centimetres. And the same idea for any size. Start rolling tightly from the wide end. Keep it in the middle. And so you need enough length on this for it to come around so you can get it into the holes. One looks even more like a croissant. There you have it. There's another way you can make these chap knots. It's just a little bit different, and you end up with 2 strips of leather that maybe you could tie it onto something with. So to make this type, the shape looks like this. So mine is 1.5 inches, that's 4 centimetres at this end. 6 inches long, that's 15 centimetres, and I've just got it at like a good 1/2 inch at the end, that's 1.2 centimetres, and I've just punched 2 holes in the end there. So roll this up like you did the other type, all the way this time. And see where the holes land, and then mark that position. Can you see my marks there? And then unroll it and go and put holes there. I'll be back. I'm back, and I've got holes in here now, and now I'm just going to thread the piece of leather through the holes, and note which way I'm doing it. The ends need to emerge through the right side of the leather, not the wrong side. Okay. Now, this time rolling it up again, but we've got glue on this. I'm not sure if this is the best kind of glue to use, but it seems to work okay. Then as you come round, these holes will be in the right place for you to poke the ends of the leather strip through, like this. Like that, and then you just tie them. If you're a bag maker, you could use a chap knot to have a toggle and loop fastening on a bag. Or how about if you're making a duffel coat, you could have these as the toggles. Instead of having wooden toggles, you could have leather like this. This is a medieval self-stuffed button. It's spherical and it's made of linen, and it's stuffed with itself. I'll show you how to make one. They're pretty easy. You start with a square of fabric, and I suggest make it 5 centimetres by 5 centimetres, and then draw a circle on there. This template looks like it's 34 millimetres diameter. And then do running stitch on the circle. and you need to use very strong thread. So I'm using Gutermann upholstery thread, but if you haven't got any, use several strands of regular thread, because you'll be pulling this up really tightly and you don't want the thread to break. I'm using a darker thread so that you can see what I'm doing, but use one that matches the fabric preferably. Okay, so when you've done the circle, let's go out the other side here, done the circle, fold the sides in as you pull the running stitch tight. And if necessary, use the needle to sort of poke it in as you go. Okay, so at the moment it looks like this, but it's not quite round and it's a bit soft. You can see I can squash that pretty easily. Now take your needle again and do another row of running stitch, just sort of around the top here like this. I'm just going around back to where I started. Okay, then pull that up really tight, and at the same time squash it into a round shape, and you can see that smooths out the wrinkles. Oops, smooths out the wrinkles on the side there, and then just finish off at the back. I like to make a stitch, wind round 3 times, pull through, and then bury the end. You can see that is quite tight and round, and you could do rows of those on cuffs or backs of dresses, backs of bridal dresses instead of pearl buttons maybe. I will say that the fabric makes a big difference with these, with how successful they'll be. The one I just showed you was, I think, some kind of heavy viscose. The more pliable the fabric, the better. So this one at the beginning, that was a very pliable linen, and that worked great. These two are in quilting cotton, and they're not very good. Can you see how they are not round? The fabric is sort of a bit too crisp to really stretch around in a circle shape. This tiny one here is Liberty Tana Lawn. It's not too bad. It makes a very small button, and this is in like a wool twill, and that was great as well. That's a very firm button, and I use the same 5 centimetre square for all of these, and you can see you've got a few different button sizes there. These buttons are made entirely of thread. This type of button was typically used for men's shirts in the Jane Austen era, and they were also called Dorset bird's eyes. And the button's made entirely from a heavy linen thread that's thicker than sewing thread. If you don't have any handy, you could try using pearl cotton, like this brown one is pearl cotton. This one is sashiko thread. This white one is made using Gutermann linen thread, but I found it actually hard to work with. The thread was quite bouncy, if that makes sense, and it's very thin. And this is made from the top of flour sacks that we get bulk flour in. So if you buy flour in a sack, or if you buy poultry feed or anything that's got a chain stitched thread along the top, you can keep the thread, and it's long enough for making these. Notice that some of these have a hole in the middle and others don't. They're completely filled. So it just depends how thick your thread is and how
how big you make the ring. And they, on the back, they have like a stitched kind of a bar that goes across, and that's for sewing them on. Oh, you can see it a bit easier on this one actually, like that. Right, let's make one. So take your thread. You'll need at least 1 metre. If you have sashiko thread and you cut the skein like this, you'll have exactly 1 metre, but I find that's not quite enough for these. This one, I ran out of thread before I got to the end, before I did the bar across the back. So take the end of the thread and wind it around the end of a stick or a pencil or a 5mm knitting needle 30 times or less or more. Try 30 to start with. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so I went for 20 in the end. This one had 30 and the middle filled up. So slide it off and carefully keep that hole in the middle there. Okay, now you're going to work buttonhole stitch around the edge. So thread the other end onto a needle, come up, and make the first one. You can actually just stitch roughly around and around and around to hold this in place. Okay. Come up, stick your needle through the loop here and pull carefully. Okay, I've arrived around at the other side. I've got a neat donut with buttonhole stitch all the way around. Then I'll turn it over and then I'm going to stitch on the other side. So I'm going to have a thread lying across the back of the button, like that, and then I'll come back, take another stitch on this side. I'm going to do it 3 times actually. I'm going to go again here. And don't have any slack in that, let that sit flat level with the top of the button. So now we're going to work buttonhole stitch over those strands. So come up, wrap around and pull. Come up, wrap around and pull. Come up, wrap around and pull, and continue till you reach the other side. Button complete. Just need to fasten off the thread at the back and you're done. You can make a slightly sturdier button if you use a core of fabric. So this is a piece of linen in about a nearly matching colour, and it's a triangle with 2-inch or 5cm sides, and you just start rolling it up on the long side like this as finely as you can. It helps to have moist fingertips like this, and then wrap that around your pencil or knitting needle, slide it off, and then work exactly the same way, buttonhole stitch around and then across at the back. Hey, do you drink beer? If you do, you probably have lots of these lying around. You just need a hammer and a nail to make the holes and a block of wood to hammer on. Inspiration comes from Helmut Lang's 2004 Spring Summer collection, where he's used them more as embellishment
but you could also use them as buttons. Make sure you wash these before you do anything with them, otherwise you'll smell like beer and they'll go mouldy as well. And if they've got a piece of plastic inside the lid, just leave that in there. And simply flatten it with a hammer. And then take the nail and just hammer 2 holes in for sewing it on. If your button has writing on it like mine does, put the holes in the same spot for all of them so that they're all around the right way when they're sewn on. You can also make bigger ones, start hammering on this side and then turn it over and then finish hammering here, and then you'll get a bigger button than one with just the ends tucked over like that. Here's some ways you can use them. If you're making things with denim, they look very good on denim. Especially if you pop them with tartan for a Vivienne Westwood tribute look. They also look good on wool. Here's a wool coat with a bigger button. Here's another wool coat. This one's made from a grey army blanket. If you're worried that the rough edges of this will abrade your buttonhole and damage the fabric, you could make it either with a button and a loop instead of a button and a buttonhole, or you could make it like a cufflink. So if you sew a smaller button like this on the back with a bit of a shank in between and make 2 buttonholes, you can just slip it through that way. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye for now.